Good afternoon to our audience in Europe, the Middle East and Africa. Good morning to the Americas and good evening to the Asia-Pacific region. Thanks for getting up so early or staying up so late. Welcome to our first session of the Connecting Ports, the interactive talk show. My name is Christina Prieser, and in my daily job as economics expert and in my role as product portfolio manager at HPC Hamburg Port Consulting, I support clients worldwide in increasing their competitiveness. Today, I'm more than happy to host this event for you. Connecting Ports wants to be a talk show that interactively links ports, terminals, and the hinterland, and most importantly, looks at different perspectives of one focus topic. We broadcast live from the studio in Hamburg's historic warehouse district. This is our first session, and we are very excited about it, and thank you so much for sharing this experience with us. Our motto is debating what matters. Since you, in front of the monitors around the world, are interested in spending your valuable time with us, you certainly have an opinion on today's topic. I'd like to encourage you to share your thoughts, questions, and ideas on our topic by using the chat at any time during the event. We want to get a better understanding of what you think about one of the most central questions of today, namely our focus topic, decarbonisation on our way to a climate-neutral port industry. Where does the port industry stand in terms of decarbonisation? What comes to mind when hearing the term decarbonisation is electrification, use of renewable energies, system integration, and collaboration along the supply chain. Ports play a crucial role in the global decarbonisation challenge. This is because ports are a node for sector combination and system integration, as they host many industry sectors like transport, manufacturing, energy, and tourism. To take a deep dive into this matter, we are happy that we have 5 internationally recognized guests with us today. So let me introduce our speakers. Remotely connected are Margaret Kidd, Associate Professor and Program Director for Supply Chain and Logistics Technology at the University of Houston in Texas, United States. She's a strong believer in integrated sustainability. So thanks for being with us at such a short time, Margaret. Professor Alain Morsi, Dean at the Port Training Institute of the Arab Academy for Science, Technology and Maritime Transport in Alexandria, Egypt. He combines technology, education and sustainability in his work. A pleasure to have you with us, Professor Alain. Hector Carls, Head of Sustainability at Barcelona Port Authority in Spain. His principle is we have to respond to climate change as a citizen and as a professional. And we must act now. A very warm welcome, Hector, to you. And Jan-Hendrik Pietsch, Head of Sustainability at HHLA, Hamburg Hafen and Logistik AG, the largest terminal operator in Germany. He supported the achievement of Container Terminal Altenwerder in becoming the first climate-neutral terminal. His motto is, sustainability is something big, but consists of many small measures that start in the private life of each of us. So welcome, Jan-Hendrik, and thank you so much for being with us. And finally, our studio guest, we welcome Johannes Schmidt, the Climate and Innovation Manager at Hamburg Port Authority. He is passionate about tackling climate change and fostering sustainability in all areas of life. Great to have you here, Johannes. Before we start talking with our guests, we have prepared a short video summarizing why we need to act now. These are alarming pictures many of us hardly thought possible until a few years ago. So let's start with Margaret. As part of the global supply chain, which role can the port industry play to mitigate the consequences of climate change?
Well, thank you, Christina. Good morning from Houston. I really approach this more from the lens of geography and urban planning. But when we consider ports in that they're major nodes of connectivity in terms of marine traffic, urban activity, access to hinterland, and we apply these planning techniques or even social network analysis and graph theory, then we can consider ports in terms of degree of centrality. So nodes with a high degree of centrality have the best connections to those around them. They're influential, right? And in the most basic form, ports have a high degree of centrality. They're connected to liner shipping, as you mentioned. They're connected to rail. They're connected to drayage. They're connected to customs. They're connected to other ports, elected officials, and government agencies. So as such, they're uniquely positioned to both lead and facilitate conversations between stakeholders and to drive standardization of processes, best practices, and collaboration to mitigate climate change. If we look at Hamburg, for instance, and Houston, based on a UN report that Jan Hoffman wrote year before last, you'd see that in terms of node degree, Hamburg is ranked number 7 globally with 206 direct connections, and Houston's ranked 13 with 159. So these are ports that have a lot of centrality. A great example, moving on into best practices, collaboration, driving conversations here locally this summer. The Port of Houston was proud to welcome the first electric drayage vehicle, and it was a partnership between the port, Sunburst Truck Lines, Nikola Corporation, and now collectively they are working to identify grants to establish a larger fleet for this company and charging stations. If we also look at ports from the context of centrality and influence as economic engines for their communities, for the region, for nations, regardless of geography. I can share that just last week I'm in a conversation with a VP at DP World, and he provides that Jebel Ali and the free trade zone account for almost 30% of GDP in Dubai. Moving over to North America and looking at the Houston Ship Channel, approximately 20% of Texas GDP comes from my region through the Houston Ship Channel, and more than 1.35 million jobs. So, ports play a very central role. I mean, global trade is local economic development. It is people. Ports are not only central stakeholders and drivers of this economic prosperity through a multiplier effect, they're most saliently in the most unique position to influence and to take responsibility, to bring stakeholders together, to assume a servant leadership role, and to drive conversations and collaborations around mitigation of climate change.
Great. So that's all very interesting. So and also important to hear what's going on in the world. So is there anything else you would like to add in this regard, or shall we?
I think there's 5 of us that have a lot to share. My contribution is really from this micro lens and through how I look at the world from my planning background.
Over to Johannes. In your role as climate manager your views on the Port of Hamburg's climate goals. So what does the Hamburg Port Authority have to consider when it comes to reducing CO2 emissions in the Port of Hamburg, and what are the priorities?
Yeah, thank you for the question. First of all, before answering this question, it is important maybe to explain a little bit the structure about the Port of Hamburg. First of all, so we as a HPA Hamburg Port Authority, we are landlord port authorities. That means that we are mainly responsible for the infrastructure in the port. And that also means that we do not produce most emissions in the ports, so the largest CO2 emission projects are carried out by our partners in the port. That's the first thing. And the second aspect we have to consider that the Port of Hamburg is not a pure transport port. So we also have a lot of industry here in the port, also some energy intensive factories, for example, steel factories that of course need a lot of energy to fulfill their daily operations. And that also means that the most emissions in the port are produced by these industries located in the port, and that can also be considered as a top priority in the port. And we are very happy that we have a lot of industries that are at the forefront of decarbonization activities. And the other aspect when it comes to prioritization is of course the shipping sector, mainly due to two reasons. The first one is of course also the maritime sector is a very energy efficient mode of transport, but nevertheless it produces in absolute numbers a lot of energy and emissions also in the port. And also, since we are a port which is directly located in the city, the shipping sector is sometimes viewed a little bit critically in the public. So also that's also the reason why we with our partners do a lot of projects to really reduce emissions. And the third priority is of course the land transport. And we are a little bit proud that we are one of Europe's leading train ports here, and but nevertheless we also want to increase the share of train transport also from the port and to the port, and also we want to foster the inland barge transport a little bit more, so a model shift from road transport to more train. And finally, of course, we also consider the port terminals, and so we are also very happy that Mr. Peach is here, and he will also maybe explain that one of that terminals is the first climate neutral terminal in the world. So that's also one aspect we have to consider. So different components in the port which have to be prioritized when it comes to decarbonization.
Thank you very much, Johannes. So the Port of Hamburg has one thing in common with the Port of Barcelona, as they are both located within large cities. Hector, from your perspective, being responsible for sustainability at Barcelona Port Authority, are there similarities with Hamburg in the effort to decarbonize? And what are the priorities in the Port of Barcelona?
Well, yeah, there are similarities, but there are also different in how to face the decarbonization strategy. We are both European ports, so we have, let's say, the willing to become a zero port. We are landlord ports, so we have our KTTs and challenge, and we are subject to the same legal framework and policies. So we have both a strategy and a plan for decarbonization, but the projects and the focus, I think, are a little bit different. And this is because we are different ports. As Johannes said, the Port of Hamburg is an industrial harbor, it's an industrial port, basically. And while Barcelona Port, for example, don't have industry or have few industry inside the port. So maybe the focus and the measures are not in the same area. For example, we have the same pillars. We bet on renewable energy. We bet in circular economy, in alternative fuels plants inside the port, in energy efficiency, in OPS. this is the pillars, the same pillars to achieve the goals of the decarbonization, but the projects are a little bit different due to the port type, the features of the port, and the geographical situation. For example, in the case of renewable energy, Barcelona Port cannot install wind energy. We don't have the resource, and we have an airport very close to. So we have to implement to set up photovoltaic instead of wind. We are powerful in photovoltaic. For example, another example in circular economy, there are projects in Hamburg Port using biomass from the industry. What we are doing in circular economy is try to recover the waste, the organic waste from the vessels, from the cruises and the surrounders, to try to generate bio LNG. There are some differences. The same in energy efficiency projects. There are projects in Port of Hamburg recovering heat, waste heat, while in Barcelona Port, because we have one of the largest European regasification plants, we are taking advantage, or we are recovering the cold, the free grace. So these are some examples. And then the focus. Imagine, in Barcelona Port, 70% of the emissions of CO2 are due to the vessels, the shipping. In Port of Hamburg, as far as I remember, it was the 9%, while the industry in Port of Hamburg is responsible and contributes in the 75% of the emissions. So the focus and the measures cannot be the same. For us, it's very important, the electrification of the keys, because in doing that project, we reduce a lot the complete emissions of the Port of Barcelona. Then, second step, or another important project is the renewable, because we want to nourish this OPS with green energy produced in the port. So there are some similarities in the goals, in the pillars that we will use, but the projects and the focus on the source are different. This is what I say.
Thank you very much, Hector. Quickly jumping in here, I wonder what our viewers have to say, and I'm very much interested in your opinion. So what do you think? What are the biggest drivers for ports to reduce emissions? Please use our chat to give us your thoughts and ideas. In the meantime, Johannes, coming back to you, what have you identified as the most promising measures with the greatest saving potential to decarbonize? And even more important, what is feasible in the short run and what will take a longer breath?
Yeah, good question. But first of all, I have to mention that we cannot focus only on climate mitigation measures, since climate change, we will probably not stop it. We can limit climate change and also global heating, but we cannot stop it. So we also have to prepare for the climate change, and we have to also to apply some measures really to be prepared for extreme weather conditions like heavy rainfalls, like floods, but also for heat waves and so on and so on. And that's one aspect we have to consider, so the climate adaptation measures. But here the question was with a focus on climate mitigation measures. And we see three areas of particular importance for decarbonization activities in the Port of Hamburg. And the first one is we want to increase the usage and also the adaptation of renewable energy in the port. And here also important to note that we cannot say that's the best solution for all ports, since the conditions vary from port to port. For example, in Singapore, of course, photovoltaic solar energy makes totally sense. Maybe in colder regions not so much. We cannot use hydropower or tidal energy, but we can make use, for example, of wind energy. So we have already 14 wind turbines in the port, and we also want to expand it, since we see it as a good potential for using renewable energy. And also another aspect is that we want to increase the usage of photovoltaics in the port. And there are so many fields of application for photovoltaic, also for industrial customers. We can use it For example, on the storages, we can use it on roads, even on different aspects of parking lots and so on. And we also want to expand it. And another interesting project is that we can also use here in the port geothermal energy. So we currently have a very interesting concept here in the port where our energy provider uses geothermal energy and provides the energy to the households and the industrial customers. And that's a good project, but of course not feasible for all ports. The second component besides renewable energy is energy efficiency and also electrification. And here also electrification and energy efficiency can also go hand in hand with digitalization. A good example could be a traffic management system already partly implemented here in the port, where the goal is really to optimize the traffic flow on the port and thus reduce not only carbon emissions, but also air emissions and also noise emissions. Another project also carried out, for example, by the terminal operators is the electrification of cargo handling equipment. And another aspect which could be also or will probably be more important in future is also energy storages, because we need it, because wind energy is not always available. So for example, we have here in the Port of Hamburg also a volcanic energy storage that uses the heat from the volcanic rocks to store the energy and feed it back into the grid. That's also a good example of a smart energy project. And the last component we also see as a huge potential, maybe in the long term, as we all know, is hydrogen, or better said, sustainable fuel. So also we have the goal that we become Europe's logistics hub for hydrogen import and also a hydrogen hub. And there are also already many different projects in the ports already initiated. So we already have a small hydrogen producer in the port. We want to install a huge electrolyzers in the port with 100 megawatt capacity. That's also a good project. We as a HBA, we also have a collaboration with one of the largest producer of hydrogen air products. And also the HHLA is quite active in this field and has various projects in the field of hydrogen. But as we all know, hydrogen is currently developing, and this could take a longer time also to provide the infrastructure. And we need also the vessels, we need the demand that really require, for example, hydrogen. So, but that's, in my opinion, one of the most important aspects when it comes to decarbonization activities in the ports, and ports will play a crucial role as an import hub, but also, since we have a lot of industry customers, as a producer and maybe also as an end user of the sustainable fuels, probably hydrogen, ammonia, methanol, whatever it will be.
Thank you very much, Johannes. Very interesting to hear that. So we have now heard something about priorities of port authorities, and I wonder whether the view or the ranking of the measures is somehow different for a terminal operator. So therefore, we would like now to know what terminals can do in their operations to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and operate emission-free. So, Jan-Hendrik, which are the climate targets HHLA has set, and can you give us a few examples of the activities you want to implement and how to achieve your journey to a climate-neutral operations?
Yes, thank you, Christina. Thanks a lot. I'm actually sitting here in a small town, right, with a view on the North Sea, and it's raining. It's a bit different because the last 4 weeks we have had a lot of sun here. So when I drove up here, I could see all corn was needing rain. So I'm glad there is some rain at the moment. So let me answer your question, and I would like first to start with an overview. If we talk about CO2 emissions in global logistic chains, I think it's very important to remember that in a long global logistic chain, for example, let's say from China to the heart of Europe, to Prague or Warsaw or to wherever, well over 90% occur during the shipping line transports the container. Roughly, the container handling at the terminals is about 1 to 3%, depending on how often the container gets handled. Plus, we have a so we call hinterland transport, and that's about anything between 5 and 10%. So as HHLA is not only a terminal operator, we generate about half of our turnover with our train or rail activities. We have two main areas where we focus on. The first focus is that we intend to increase the market share of rail further. And the Port of Hamburg has already achieved around 50%. As far as we know, this is one of the highest market shares in absolute numbers. We think it's number one in the world. So the main focus in terms of to generate a maximum impact is to increase the market share of the rail business. Nevertheless, as I said, the terminals emit, if you look at the whole transport chain, anything between 1 and 3% of CO2 emissions. Our other big field of focus are our terminals. And within the terminals, we have a clearly focused strategy on three fields. First of all, it's the technological development. And if we talk about technological development, we see all manufacturers know this is the big theme. Energy prices are going up incredibly. So energy efficiency is the big theme. We're constantly trying and using the latest technology available, either completely electrified machines and devices or semi-electrified machines and devices. For the future, we see there will be a trend towards hydrogen. There will be a trend perhaps to other alternative fuels. This will be developed. The future will show which technology will be the best for us. We are very active in the field of technology. So we have this first level, that's the technological development. The second level is the efficiency, the operational efficiency. With clever digitalization software algorithms, you can improve the efficiency. You can load and unload a ship at the same time. You can minimize empty drives on the container terminals. This all adds up to a higher degree of energy efficiency. And the nice thing is that this is always related to decreasing costs. And decreasing costs obviously brings you into a better competitive position. And last but not least, it's the own skills of all of our employees, from the straddle care driver to the STS handler. We are training people. We are training, for example, our locomotive drivers for energy efficient driving, etc., etc. If we look further into our terminals, the main strategy we have followed and will continue to follow is the electrification of the terminals, and therefore obviously substitute diesel as energy with green electricity. We also produce little amounts of own electricity and constantly analyzing possibilities to produce more green electricity. Our target is to be climate neutral by 2040, and we have a midterm target in 2030 when we want to halve our absolute emissions compared to 2018. And we have by now, by 2021, already achieved a 27% reduction in absolute energy, in absolute CO2 emissions compared to 2018. So we are good on track. In fact, we are a little bit better than our plan, and we will continue to invest into green technology and into future developments.
Thank you very much, Jan-Henrik. Before we continue, there was a comment from the audience, which I would like to share with you. And one of our guests says, the biggest drivers of decarbonisation are regulations and pressure from the public. Otherwise, only low-hanging fruits will be tackled because being sustainable, unfortunately, doesn't give you a competitive advantage yet. So against the view what you just explained to us, Jan-Henrik, can you give us a short comment about that? Because I think that goes directly in your direction of what you just said.
Absolutely. Thank you, Christina. That is not what we think. We have introduced a new product about 2.5 years ago, which is called HHLA Pure. It stands for carbon neutral transport in the hinterland. Our customers like this product because with this product, which is a TÜV certified climate neutral product, customers are able to get their containers climate neutral from the harbor towards the end destination terminal. We can see that, we learn that when we talk to customers, be it freight forwarders or direct customers, they all aim towards climate neutrality in the long term, and they all aim to reduce their CO2 emissions in their supply chains. Another question, and that certainly is a very important question, is how much are the customers willing to pay for it? And of course, the willingness to pay for it is not that big. So you have to find clever ways to convince a customer or to offer a product which includes, for example, climate neutrality.
Thank you very much, Jan-Henrik, for this elaboration and interesting views. So we have now got some information about the European ports industry. So let's switch continents now and go over to the Middle East and Africa region, and especially the Eastern Mediterranean region. So in November 2022, Egypt will host the United Nations Climate Change Conference in the green city of Sharm el-Sheikh. And this allows us to ask Professor Alaa from Egypt, in view of COP27, what is the Egyptian port industry doing to reduce the impact of its operations on the environment and the climate?
Thank you, Christina, for giving me this opportunity to represent the South Mediterranean ports and the African and the Arab ports in generally. As you said, Egypt have the honor to host COP27 for climate conference in Sharm el-Sheikh next November to build on what was achieved in the previous climate change conference held in Glasgow 2021. Actually, Arab Republic of Egypt have many plans to increase the percentage of green projects in its general budget. So you can imagine that we increase the budget of the allocated for the green transition from 15% currently to reach 50% to reduce the percentage of harmful emission and switch to clean energy. Let's go through some statistics has been done through the Egyptian sectors that the shipping industry in the Egyptian market is responsible for about 17% of the total annual carbon dioxide emission in Egypt, which I think it is a very huge number. That's why during the previous period, we make many investment in the field of green transition, especially in Suez Canal Economic Zone. Let's discuss some of these investment held in Egypt during this period. We have established a mega green hydrogen refueling station in Suez Canal area for making this huge project for producing about 300,000 tons of green hydrogen. Of course, you all know that green hydrogen is coming from solar systems or making changing the wasting material, the organic waste or plastic waste, and changing it to solar system. Suez Canal Economic Zone have signed many service agreement and contract during the past 6 months with many companies such as H2 Industries, which is, by the way, it is a German company with a total budget reach $4 billion American dollars for producing these huge tons of green hydrogen per year. Actually, this green hydrogen coming from municipal solid waste, so we can remove about 4 million tons of solid waste and changing this waste to green hydrogen. Also, we have many agreement with Abu Dhabi Future Energy Company to build a green hydrogen plant in Suez Canal Zone with a capacity of 500,000 tons of green hydrogen up to 2030. This is related to the green hydrogen we are making in the Egyptian sector. On the other hand, also we have many plans for replacing all the logistics equipment to work with electricity and with clean energy. So we are have an ambitious plan for making a solar power planet. Actually, the solar power planet with a budget about $500 million. We are making 13 solar planets all over Egypt, especially in the south of Egypt, with a total capacity of 590 megawatt, which is allocated actually in Pinpan, which is near Aswan in the south of Egypt. This Pinpan solar complex with installed capacity of 1.8 gigawatt will contribute to the Egyptian government target to reach 42% of each energy to be covered by the solar energy up to 2035. Of course, all these regulations and all these investment made by the Egyptian government hand by hand with the strict regulation and a set of environmental requirements during the operation of loading and unloading and all the port activities, and the operation of supplying shipping with fuel also, and the safely dispose of the polluting material in the marine environment. I think this case is not in Egypt specifically, but all over the North Africa and South Mediterranean port. That's why we are making very strong collaboration and cooperation between Egypt port authorities and the shipping lines and all the port in our area. And I hope this make a huge achievement in the next years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Allah. At the COP27, the world leaders and political influencers will celebrate the 30th anniversary of this climate conference. So it's an important milestone for all the region and all the world. So question, Hector, you've been in the maritime industry for some time and have worked in different fields. So I guess you have a very comprehensive overview of the industry. And what do you think, why it has taken the port industry so long to align its development with climate neutrality?
Well, what I have seen now with respect to the past years, first of all, is a clear and firm policies from not only the member states or let's say from a national local perspective, but also from European Union and also worldwide. I mean, there are clear policies to tackle the problem of climate change and sustainability and decarbonization. So this is the first point. The second point is that there is a clear and firm legal framework. So this legal framework are setting the deadlines, are setting the limits, are setting the goals, the fees, even the penalties, the subsidies. So this is a clear framework now. The third point that I can see that is as one of the agendas pointed, and it's for me is one of the most important one, is that the society, entire society, is demanding a change. Is saying is an unequivocal claim about climate change and sustainability. So society is awareness of this, essential on this. So it cannot be changed. And this is a very important factor. If we move to the materialistic factors, we can find now that a lot of funds to do the transformation, to do the transition. For the example of Europe is the Next Generation funds. And this is important. It's very important because all this transformation will be very expensive. So there are dedicated funds. Then, as appointed Jan-Henrik, there is a green, let's say, an opportunity for green transport. And it's very important. So I think the customers have awareness and have the willing to pay more for a sustainable and green transport. So there are companies, customers that are willing to pay more if it can be granted that this transport or this logistic chain is sustainable. This is very important. And the clear example of these are the green corridors or the eco delivery or the formula that Jan-Henrik explained. So this is very important because now there is an opportunity for this green model. And this moves some of the companies, some of the stakeholders to a real believing of this new model and its transformation. So there is also an opportunity for some companies to break the status quo in this new playground. The playground has changed. Now it's not let's say a change, or it's not an alternative to only wait and see. Some years ago, wait and see, not doing nothing, business as usual, was a clear option. Was not risky, not too much investment. Now, to do this is not an option. I'm sure that you will, as a company or a stakeholder, you will impair your competitiveness. You will be out of the market soon. There will be new players coming in and compete with you. So there is a shackle in the entire system, and it's good. And it's very good. In addition, in the case of Europe, for me, there is an important point, it's like an acceleration point, like the car accelerator. Unfortunately, we have seen again in Europe war. Yes, I'm talking about war in Europe. And in terms of energy, we can now see a scarcity of problems in energy supply. Not only Europe, but it affects worldwide. This is an accelerator. It's an accelerator of new technologies, new energies, self-sufficiency, independence in terms of energy. So all this framework, I think, make the change possible. Some years ago, as I said, there was no matter, there was no problem in due to business as usual. Now times are changing. This is my opinion.
Thanks a lot, Hector. And that leads us to the participation within the port community. So how does it work to involve all stakeholders in the port and convince them to follow a common goal? And how did you do that in Barcelona, Hector? And in addition, we have also a question from the audience in that regard. Are there any green ship incentive programs in place in Barcelona? And are there any collaborations with other ports in your range to reward shipping carriers to operate environmentally sound vessels? So this is more from the port to the shipping community.
Well, if you want, I can start with the port community. Well, it is not easy because there are a large number of stakeholders, and there is an heterogeneity on the stakeholders. But applying the principle that it's better to work together to reach some common goals than work individually, I think that it can work. As a port and as port authority, we have some capacities and some responsibilities, and we can also let's say define or outline some rules, some recommendations based on local, national, and European legislation. So, being the landlord, being the common platform of all these stakeholders, we think that the port authority must lead the decarbonization in the port community. How we did in Barcelona? Well, some years ago, we created what is like a governing council, okay, where all the community, the port community, is included, and there are working groups for thematics. Okay, one of the thematics is the environmental sustainability, where all the members that can join us, and what we discuss, what we trade, what we work is about sustainability and decarbonization goals, how to achieve it. We analyze the legal framework, we analyze the technologies, we analyze potential and ongoing projects, we analyze the milestones. So we create a big community in this sense, so we can work together. And any one of them, even they are small, big companies, maybe the requirements of ones are not exactly the same, but then what can express their worries. We can work together and we can do a plan for the decarbonization, trying to include all the community. This is what we do in Barcelona Port.
Thanks a lot, Hector. That's really impressive. So, turning to the Port of Hamburg, how is the status of cooperation here, Johannes?
Yeah, first of all, I also like to mention that we see, and also I see, collaboration as a key role for the decarbonization activities, not only the port. For example, in I started my professional career was doing research in a mobility group, and there I heard the first time from the so-called chicken and egg problem regarding infrastructure for electric vehicles. And the problem is very similar to the port industry. For example, there was a question, who is responsible for building the charging infrastructure for electric vehicles? Because there is no demand since there are no electric vehicles, but there is also no demand since there's no charging infrastructure available. So that's a beautiful example, in my opinion, really for the chicken and egg problem in the decarbonization activities. And it's very similar in the port industry. Regarding onshore power, for example, we need collaboration because we need really the confirmation of the shipping owners that they really use the shore power, so that we have really also a business case for it, of course. And also we have to cooperate with international ports regarding standardization for onshore power, for example. Another good example is the infrastructure for hydrogen. And so there's currently the question in which kind or which energy carrier for hydrogen will it be in future? Will it methanol, ammonia? Will it be carbonized hydrogen? Nobody knows so far, but we have really to work also with the ship owners together, with the international and also with other ports, that we really develop common measures. And of course, so international collaboration is very important between ports and the maritime industry, so the shipping industry, but also between ports and the industry. And Another aspect is, of course, national cooperation is also quite important. So we are, for example, a nice project is a zero emission at ports project here in Germany from almost all port authorities in Germany, where we also develop solutions to decarbonize shipping activities in the port. And of course, coming back to your question, sorry to mention the information beforehand, is national or local cooperation, and that's also a key here in Hamburg, because there are a lot of industry cooperations and also between logistics companies and policy institutions when it comes to decarbonization activities, and that's also very important. And one good example is the Hamburg Hydrogen Industry Network, where initiated by the local energy provider and with collaboration from logistics companies and also Port Authority, where we really try to develop common solutions for hydrogen import and usage. Another good example for local cooperation is between HPA and HHLA when it comes to shore power for the container vessels on the terminals. And also a very beautiful project is conducted by the energy provider here also in Hamburg, the Hamburger Energiepark, where they really collect all the industrial waste from the industrial customers. They collect it, they transform it, and then they transmit the heat energy back to the industry. That's a very beautiful project where collaboration makes totally sense also between the industry and the logistics companies. But maybe also in future there could also be an overarching decarbonization network where we really have all these activities in one, but that's maybe a good idea for the future.
Thank you, Johannes. So also important in this regard to put sustainable development into the center of economic activities is the questions what qualifications are required. So addressing Professor Allah, how far are we in this regard? To which extent are the training institutions ready and have focus on sustainability in their agenda?
Great. Thank you for this important question, which is divided to two parts. For the first part, I think there is a gap between the economical aspects and the green transition aspect. Because for the businessman and from the financial aspect, all the stakeholders in the shipping and maritime industry focuses on the profits and what is the benefits, what is the solid benefits come for them, for him as an investor. On the other hand, they are found that green transition and environmental care, it is sort of luxurious aspect, which is not an important as the economic and the financial aspect. And of course, they have all this right. But I think it is insufficient and inefficient either to aim economically growth and only later worry about the environmental consequences, or to promote environmental sustainability and subsequently worry about its growth implementation. So we must make a balance between the economical aspects and the green policies between these two issues. That's why I think that green policies can indeed contribute to the economical growth over the short term if they are designed in appropriate framework. That is very important to put it in appropriate framework. Also, the rapid action in need to keep the cost of green growth manageable and avoid irreversible losses. This applies to developing and undeveloping country both. Regarding our initiatives as the Port Training Institute, cover many disciplines and cover many training programs all over the Arab ports and the Arab port authorities. All our training programs are tolerated to the Sustainable Development Goals. Of course, all of you know that there is a World Port Sustainable Program which held in Antwerp in Belgium, 2017. And this WPSP have 6 pillars, which is the pillars of the World Port Sustainable Program, which is the digitalization and the green transition. All these pillars we are making in training program packages, and we are making a huge campaign, huge awareness campaign. Of course, it is in collaboration with the European and South and North Mediterranean Port Authority for making such training and awareness campaign. My point of view, to start for this green transition, we need an awareness campaign for all the employees in the shipping industry and in the port authorities, as well as just to raise the economical awareness and make the balance between the economical aspects and the green transition aspects. Also, I think we need an investment incentives and tax benefits associated with the employment training for the research and development. We need a tax environment subsidizing environmentally friendly project and the reduction of taxes in such projects. That's why we need to put our hand with the investors to submit for them the financial encouraging for making such green transition. I think it is very important to make such collaboration between the financial aspects and the economic point of view and the green transition. And I think we have many initiatives in this achievement in Egypt and in Arab countries.
Thank you very much, Professor Allah. And Margaret, what do you think? Does the port industry need a new mindset relating to what Professor Allah just said? And to which extent do training institutions in the United States already think about this idea?
Christina, that's a really fair question. I mean, let's be very frank here. If you look at the US in general, our perspective, just an industrial perspective, is very different on climate change and environment than, say, the European experience. I would posture that the US needs a much stronger consensus and commitment, not only across industry, but within the US citizenry, how we address climate change. If you pick up any major publication in the US, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, this becomes acutely aware if you just on a regional basis, the responses to climate change. You have states like California that have very restrictive measures going as far as, you know, at some point, I think there's a new reg on the books to eliminate cars at some point that use fossil fuels. But flash forward, I'm sitting here in Houston, energy capital of the US, and home of, you know, every other family drives a Ford F-150. But, you know, when we're looking at the port sector, I'm very proud to say locally, the Port of Houston does have a sustainability action plan. They have a number of projects, I want to say over 90, and they also have an environmental, social, and safety governance policy. So I think overall the U.S. port industry is looking at and targeting a carbon neutral footprint in the next 30 years, you know, through upgrading technology, improving infrastructure, equipment, utilizing alternative fuels and clean energy sources. But, you know, if we really want to look at leadership, we need to be looking at Europe and the Middle East and Asia in terms of operational efficiency of ports and corresponding improved environmental conditions through the impacts of digitization and automation. The U.S. port industry has not embraced automation. Part of this is related to political economy from the context of our federal government has not invested in infrastructure in decades. And yes, we do have an infrastructure bill, but that doesn't make up for 6 decades of underinvestment. You also, from a labor context, have a perceivable pushback from organized labor regarding automation. And so there needs to be some sort of common ground established between port operators and laborers to move U.S. ports into that next level of efficiency through automation. You know, coming from a tier 1 public research university in the 4th largest city in the U.S., and home to a port that's the #1 port in tonnage in the U.S., there's a role that we play at the university in terms of workforce development, filling the skills gap for our regional workforce to meet 21st century job skills. And this is both in context of undergraduate, graduate degrees, and also non-credit certifications, or we could call it upskilling people as they're transitioning careers. Within the program I direct, the Supply Chain and Logistics Technology, we've recently developed several courses that do reflect on climate change. One is a sustainability course for supply chain and logistics, and the other is we've notably recruited an expert from the city of Houston, who's a GIS expert, Geographic Information Systems. And so we've embedded GIS in 3 courses and are in the process of rolling out an independent GIS course to look at not only optimization of logistics processes, but the environmental side of it. I am proud to say earlier this year, the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board here in my state recognized my program and approved it as a STEM-related degree program. So it's great news for our international students, because that allows them to come to Houston and study and then stay for an additional 2 years on an extended visa, as long as they're working in supply chain or logistics. I will say that currently my team in supply chain, we are developing a digital track for our degree plan, and it includes big data analytics, intelligent transportation systems, smart logistics design, transportation planning, and additional GIS courses. And this is actually being funded by a grant we were awarded this summer from the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. But I would close with this thought that universities in the U.S. and our counterparts, community colleges and technical colleges, are key determinants of regional competitiveness in terms of workforce development that meets industry needs. So it's really imperative for us that we stay ahead of the curve in terms of preparing the workforce and working through this whole energy transition and preparing for those new jobs.
That's great, Margaret. Thanks a lot. And I have a follow-up question for you. And in addition to that, one from the audience. So thinking about the global supply chain, what about the ability to collaborate in corridors? And in that regard, from the audience, how can we improve the cooperation between the United States and Europe in these matters?
Well, let me address between the United States and Europe. I think, if we're talking from, where my lens as a college professor, really integrating our students study abroad, having them exposed to European cultures and values and systems, it could be an earth-changing moment for them. We live in a little bit of an isolation here in the U.S. where we have very cheap oil prices. It's very typical for folks to have multiple cars within a family because of the lack of public transport. So I think part of that is just being immersed in this other culture. But, regarding collaboration, for people that have seen me in the media the last 2 years, one of the things I'm fond of saying is reminding people what Charles Darwin said. And Darwin said the survival of the species is based on collaboration and adaptation. Those same principles apply to the maritime sector and the port sector. We've got to be collaborating, we've got to be adapting, we've got to be agile. I think a great illustration from Europe and Asia and even the Middle East is this collaboration between ports in terms of sharing data. And I know clearly Hamburg Port Consulting has played an instrumental role in developing port community systems globally. And I mean, having that type of system certainly impacts sustainability. I mean, in terms of optimizing schedules and the impact on the environment of not having wait time, right? I think COVID also provided some great lessons learned. You know, here in the US, Amazon, you know, came up with this great model where they pivoted to chartering their own ships and planes for their cargo. And with the spare capacity, they monetized that and provided it to competitors, right? So you have a full plane load or a full boat load. So I thought that was really insightful. I think there's some strong possibilities with this concept of green shipping corridors. They look promising. You know, I think there's still challenges to work through as far as definitions, leadership, governance, evaluation. But I would be looking to that as, you know, a possible collaboration of multiple stakeholders. But simply put, we can't address climate change alone. We can't address it in silos. It needs to be a collective response at multiple scales to be successful. This means port industries, academia, government, nonprofits, community organizations, and many more, and really focused as a global effort.
Thank you very much, Margaret. And talking about cooperation and collaboration along the supply chain, Professor Allard and Hector, you are both involved in the MedPorts Association, which currently includes 23 Mediterranean port authorities and 2 institutions in the region. So what form does the collaboration take for you, Professor Allard?
Actually, I think that MedPorts Association is very great idea. MedPorts Association was held in 2018. As you said, it consists of 23 port authorities and 5 training institutes from the South and North Mediterranean. We have 2 training institutes from the South Mediterranean, Port Training Institute affiliated to the Arab Academy for Science, Technology and Maritime Transport, and another Maritime Institute in Tunisia. There is also 3 training institutes in the North Mediterranean, Valencia Port Foundation in Spain, and Marseille Institute in France, and also Scuola Europea in Barcelona in Spain. So these 5 training institutes collaborate together during this 5 or 6 years of implementation of MedPorts Association. We are sharing knowledge, making joint courses, sharing knowledge between employees of different ports. For example, nowadays, today specifically, or this week, we have a joint course with Scuola Europea in Barcelona. We have more than 100 participants from South and North Mediterranean. All of them are employees in different port authorities. They are sharing knowledge with each other. The title of the for this joint course is SDGP, Smart Digital Green Port. We have many lectures from the Italian and Spain side, as well as from the Egyptian side. That's what I was talking in my previous speech, that we need a huge awareness campaign for all port authority to make to little the wide gap between the technology and the financial aspects between the North and the South Mediterranean ports. That's why I think more stakeholders and the decision maker must be participate in such event, such to make the little gap between the technology and the financial aspects for the North and the South Mediterranean. We are making many joint courses with Port of Barcelona, with Port of Marseille, with Port of Valencia, related to the green transition. I think it is a good opportunity for these ports to collaborate together for promoting for such idea. And I think Mr. Hector can support my idea that we are talking together with Port of Barcelona, and we are making many different events with Port of Barcelona in such specifically idea for the green transition and environment aspects.
Yeah, exactly. So please, Hector, go ahead. What about your involvement and your point of view from the Port Authority in Barcelona?
Well, I think that Mr. Allah has explained very well. But if we refer specifically in terms of climate issues or green transition, we have to see that it cannot be frontiers, it cannot be divisions, and let's say separate continents or separate river or sea basins. We are facing the same troubles. We are facing the same issues. We have all of us decarbonization strategies and energy transition strategies, and it's a matter of sharing. We have to share the knowledge, we have to share experiences, we have to share projects, we have to know what is done in each port and the problematic of each port, and try to spread decarbonization solutions to all of them. So this is an essential what we do in these forums. We do also trainee, so it's a perfect forum to know each other, what the others do, and try to, what I say, we are in the same waters and we are facing the same challenges. So it's a matter of sharing, and Professor Allah has explained very well. So I think that Barcelona port is involved, as many other ports. We represent more than 70% of the ports of Mediterranean. So is a very good group, and I think it would be very useful for northern ports as Hamburg to assist in one of the MEC ports sessions or congresses, because I think there's always things to learn from others. So you are invited to be there in the next one. So.
Thank you very much, Hector. So we have heard something about energy transition, which is a huge task that the ports face as well. And this will be the focus of our next session of Connecting Ports. So please stay tuned. And now we would like to have a look at what our audience would like to share and which questions to our speakers we have received. And this connects directly to our last point on the agenda here. And I would like to ask the speakers to be very brief in their replies. So the first one goes to Jan Hendrik. With the energy transformation, will there be any impact on our operation performance as shipping line and the supply chain?
No, there shouldn't be, because that's what our customers expect. So everything we do obviously has to be done in the phase of knowing what our customers expect from us, and they do expect highly efficient operations, and these highly efficient operations should be done in a very environmentally and CO2 free manner.
Thank you very much. Then we have a comment here. So the real commitment is required and greenwashing must be avoided. So Johannes, can you please comment on that?
I totally agree, and we have to be very careful when it comes to greenwashing, and especially because decarbonization is unfortunately a little bit new for a lot of actors like us in the port industry, and therefore we do not have specific standards, and we have to be very careful. A good example, from my opinion, would be, for example, offsetting. There are good offsetting projects, and there are not so many good offsetting projects, and we have to really be careful when it comes to offsetting, for example. So we have to prioritize really decarbonization measures before it comes to offsetting. It should be the not the first solution, and also we have to be very careful when it comes to the selection of a good offsetting project. That would be a good example, but I totally agree. We have to really to implement real measures, and we have to be very, very cautious when it comes to greenwashing. But thank you for the advice.
Thanks a lot, Johannes. And then we have a question to Hector. What role do you think organizations such as ESPO, the European Seaports Organization, or the IAPH, the International Association for Ports and Harbors, play when thinking about greening ports?
Well, I think these associations, the end is a net of collaboration of the ports. And I said we are facing all the ports. We are facing the same problems in terms of energy transition, decarbonization. I think there are organizations that are very useful, and they do hard work, and they are organized in committees with expertise of each port, and they also advise the administrations. And this is important to say, and it must not be confused by a lobby. I mean, for example, I will talk about European Union. There is a huge package of legislation, the Fit for 55, that was created, and what is supporting the policies of European Union about energy transition, about new fuels, about new infrastructures, renewables, hydrogen, Repower Europe. So, but when the European Union is entering to each sector to apply this package, I think that it's important that the stakeholders, the ports, can advise the administration about the risks of the legislation, and how to be applied to be effective and to be fit for purpose, and to achieve this purpose. Because, for example, there's a clear example. For example, about the ETS, the European Trade System. Of course, the purpose is very nice, and I think the European Union is being very courageous, and is a flagship in terms of decarbonization, is leading. I would say worldwide, but I think it's important to know the risk and to try to be effective. And it's important to hear the ports, because they know they are expert in their sectors. So, for example, if the ETS won't be well applied, what it could be caused is the opposite effect. I mean, if you don't protect the effectiveness of this legal rule, then the effect will be the opposite. And I'm referring for the carbon leakage. There is a risk of carbon leakage if it's not well applied. I think it can be even, but it can be a loss of competitiveness of European ports, and besides of this, a carbon leakage. So the effect that you wanted to prevent would be increased. So it's important. I think the role of this organization, of course, is to have technical committees, to improve, to share projects, to prepare better the ports, European ports and worldwide ports, as for example, International Harbor Ports Association, for the sector to be let's say, to reinforce the sector, but also to advise the administrations in order that these measures and these actuations will be really effective. So the cooperation of all the ports and the participation of all the ports in this association are important, because there is a lot of there are many cases. There are many. There are not the same ports in north of Europe than in south of Europe. Or one port can have some let's say requirements and some needs than another. And it's important because these organizations work for the ports, work for the administrations, and can advise properly to them for new legal actions, for new policies, and we are committed with this. So it cannot be seen as a lobby, because we are committed with the goals. Even we would like that everybody wants so ambitious, let's say, rules, so ambitious goals than the European Union in this case. We want to meet these goals, but we want to help that these goals and the ways and the actions will be effective.
Thank you very much, Hector. So with a view on our time, I'm taking just one more question right now to Margaret. And so we cannot answer all your questions because there was a lot of things going on in the chat in between. But we will address all of them. We keep in contact with our speakers. And if you have additional questions, you can send an email to us at HPC, at marketing@hpc-hamburg.de. And we will try to answer all of your questions. So final question of this session here is to Margaret. Once sustainability has become a real key value of authorities of large ports, ocean lines and other dominant players in the supply chains, also other players will follow. So this inspires to the question from the audience, who is leading sustainability, the ports or the ocean liners? Very quickly, please, the reply.
I think it's collective. I mean, it's relevant to have an ambitious goal for climate change. We need to act collectively to address, and I think we can't put it on one specific entity. My concern right now is, with a maritime industry that's so critical for an interconnected global economy, that we act for the commons. What is the best, what is the best process forward for everybody, and with particular sensitivity to the less developed countries, so that they have a just and equitable transition during this period. We've simply just got to change how the middle looks at climate change and how we address it.
Thank you very much, Margaret. That's great. So now coming towards the end of our session of Connecting Ports, I would like to ask each of our guests to give us some final quick thoughts on how important it is to have an ambitious goal for climate change, either overall or in the port industry specifically. So the question is it preferable to reduce the level of ambition for the benefit of integrating all stakeholders, or should we aim for maximum goals, accepting that only a limited number of stakeholders is able to move forward fast enough? So please, each of our speakers, 1 minute to give your thoughts on that. And we start with Margaret.
Well, I think I kind of addressed this a minute ago. It is urgent that we address the climate crisis. We're seeing it in severe weather globally. We're seeing it in sea level rise. So we can't put this on the back burner. We've got to keep these goals. I do think we have to be pragmatic, as our current reality is a very difficult geopolitical crisis during energy transition. And we still need to contextualize affordability, accessibility, security, and resilience. But it's definitely possible, and we shouldn't slow down the pace. But we need to be realistic. It's going to be a bumpy road probably for the next 24 months.
Thank you, Margaret. And Professor Alla, what are your thoughts?
In 1 minute, because I think that we have 5 minutes only. from my perspective of port and maritime industry, which represent one of the factors affecting the climate change. Of course, there is a big dilemma that must be resolved, which is the large gap between environmental measures applied. Let's give example between the Mediterranean area, the European and the traditional ports, especially in Africa. That's why I think it is better to involve a large number of stakeholders, because moving only with a limited number while applying a high standard goals will only widen the gap. In addition, also from my point of view, that environmental guidelines should be created to define environmental quality standards and indicators for all ports and container terminals or stakeholders. And from this point of view, we can establish a framework. This framework could be based on 3 levels. The first level is the awareness. We need an awareness campaign for human resources and the decision making, especially in the relation between the economical outcomes and the productivity. In the second level, I think we need a cooperation in a joint project and funded project and sharing of experts between the port authorities, the different port authorities. The third level is the environmental governance, which include the policies, rules, norms that govern ports and maritime stakeholders' operation. I think these 3 pillars, it's very important for all ports authority, North and South Mediterranean and all over the world. Thanks for this opportunity.
Thank you, Professor Alla. And Hector, your final statement, please.
Well, in my opinion, by reducing the level of ambition during the past years, drive us to the present situation. Maybe, and I'm afraid, probably, that to be ambitious is the only one alternative that we have at the present moment. This is my view. We have to push and support the ones that find it hardest, but it's not only a matter to be the largest number of stakeholders. Probably now at the moment we are. It's a matter that to have the ones who contribute the most.
Okay, thank you so much, Hector. And quickly, Jan-Hendrik, can you give us your thoughts, please?
Sorry,
Now
the mic was off. My perspective is pretty clear. We should keep the level of ambition pretty high. We need to include all stakeholders' economic perspectives, which is important, but maybe we should include into the economic perspective the cost of adaptation to climate change and the cost of environmental damage, because then suddenly a lot of economic perspectives look pretty different. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Jan-Hendrik. And finally, our guest in the studio, Johannes.
I totally confirm with Mr. Peach. We have to keep the level of absolute emission reduction quite high, but realistic also and specific also. And we have to be in line with the climate change goals from the Paris Agreement. So it seems that we do not reach the 1.5 goal. We will probably also not reach the 2 degree goal, but we have to be therefore very ambitious in the field of climate mitigation goals. And also, I totally confirm one of the main problems is that we do not consider the cost of environmental damages in our current economic perspective. We have to include it. It is, for example, floods and so on. It's all climate change, catastrophic economic costs that are not considered currently, and we have to do it. And then we will also find very, very fast a business case, and all the stakeholders can much more better be committed to the ambition climate change goals. So that's my point of view.
Thank you very much, Johannes. So thank you very much to all of you for your valuable inputs, and we appreciate very much that you were available as our guests today. So this session has been recorded and will be made available via our website hamburgportconsulting.com very shortly, and we will also provide some materials that our speakers would like to share with you. Our next session of Connecting Ports will continue debating what matters with regard to energy transition and the impacts on the port environment. Please join us again on the 6th of December. So thank you very much for being with us today, and we hope you enjoyed the show. A big thanks also to the team of Port of Hamburg Marketing, who provided the studio facilities and the technical support. Bye-bye and tschüss from Hamburg.
Bye-bye.